I'll be talking about like disentangling like legal reasoning. So our main focus is like we're trying to understand what reasoning evaluation will look like in the current scenarios and the situations we are in. Like there's no like a guided like a defined framework to how we should look at these reasoning processes. From previous slides, we got the insights about what are the deductive properties of LLM, even the failures in the abduction cases, and how this can impact the generation quality that we kind of just like believe when the model generates. We just think that okay, it's going to be right most of the time. As seen in the previous illustrations, we can understand that LLMs are being prompted using, mostly nowadays, being prompted using the chain of thought styles because that helps in improving the performances, and that's a general consensus. So the step-by-step rationals are there, but the important thing is how we look at it, and can we understand where the reasoning failure might arise in the chain. And so yeah, where the idea is to look at the output and just try to find in an automated way a problem, so that we can pinpoint it and we can use our own thought process as well to be sure about what the model gave us as an answer. So I have a case here which is a bit different from the previous one. We are talking about understanding what is the domicile of a person here. Is it Montana or Colorado? So to give you a very simple context, so I'll give you some few points about what this legal context is about. The person currently resides in Denver, moved there for a 2-year hairstylist program, was unsure about her career choices, and had plans to leave the program if she didn't like it. So she mentioned she might look for work in Denver or other Western states, including Montana. And she has a 6-month lease in Denver, previously domiciled in Montana. Because the legal context is a bit big, I tried to break it down into some specific steps. But to come back to the main thing, I have broken it down here further. So if you see, I have a context evidence about a person's domicile is where they both live and intend to stay indefinitely. And from the case evidences that Marla moved to Colorado and signed a 6 months lease. The 1 plus 2, basically what you see, gives us this conclusion that Marla lives in Colorado and she meets a residence requirement. Then we see another pair here, which is about a short lease or a fixed duration stay, which does not prove an intent to leave. That is very important. Courts look at intent, not just the documents. And she had said she had no set plan to leave and might stay or work in Denver because this was the case evidence from her situation, basically. And this gives us a context that there is an open ended future. So, what I'm showing you is what actually should have been the reasoning flow, which would have helped us in determining what is the domicile of the person. There's one more set of pairs here, like which is like a person keeps their old domicile, which is basically a kind of like a summarization of the whole process. Like a person keeps their old domicile only if they don't meet both residence and intent in the new state, and also her previous domicile, which is very important to consider here, which when combined leads to the B as a conclusion. And then the A and the B conclusion helps us in deriving that the new domicile is Colorado, Montana no longer applies, which becomes the final conclusion. So this was what the flow should have been like. And now we're going to look at a very interesting case where we see what GPT generated, and we have some GPT generated reasoning chase. Oh, that's yeah, this was generated by GPT-4o. I don't know why the annotation. Oh, maybe yeah. Yeah. No worries. I mean, I'll just clear it up. Yep. Yep. So it's very important. The steps that you see were actually generated by GPT-4. So we should be very careful. It's a state of the art model. A lot of people are using it openly, and that's why this was the reason we picked up this case. Now, interestingly, I would not like everyone to go too much into the depths. The idea being that it discusses the premises quite well, and there is a very interesting case where the fourth step, basically, if you see, the model makes the inference that Marla lease in Denver is for 6 months, which indicate that she does not have an open-ended intention to remain in Colorado indefinitely. So it's an interesting dynamic case of making an abduction and deduction in the same step, and we have already seen that abduction failures are high, and also models sometimes mess up the deductions as well. So there is an insufficient causation here. Just because A is true doesn't mean B is also true. And A here is 6 months lease, B means no intent to remain indefinitely. So since 6 months lease cannot prove that no intent to remain indefinitely. Many other factors could determine the intent here as well. A case where an LLM tries to force an induction and leads to prove it. Basically, it's trying to prove its logical correctness. So it's trying to move towards the deductive steps, but is also making some mistakes while making the abductive premises here. So this is why this misinterpretation. I hope you all can see the misinterpretation comes and arises. We move further. Again, this is very interesting. So first three steps, it was right. The fourth step, it made a mistake. And the fifth one, because the idea of an LLM is to always give you a very strong output and a well documented, well related outputs. It comes back with the fifth step that you see here, which is like well grounded again. And then because the mistake that it made in the fourth step leads us to the wrong conclusion. And the wrong conclusion was the consequence of force, because it was like it seems to draw like a wrong conclusion, because it's like it is not determined, like it was not able to break down what 6 months lease or no intent to remain indefinitely. So since this was not able to be like broken down into two parts by the LLM clearly, it led to the wrong conclusion that Marla should have been domiciled in Montana only and not Colorado. So now we'll look at what we have come up with as a system. So our idea and our focus is to look at how we can basically come up with an automated system, and we can look at the output and we can try to find out, okay, was there some mistakes and what could be those signals. So as I said, like the core idea is to check if each reasoning step is logically valid in some way, and we have created an inference evaluation system which provides us basically a relationship between a set premises and a hypothesis, based on like, is it supporting it, is it contradicting it, or is it telling us nothing, basically, which it being a neutral step. So we have these three signals which I'll show you in a diagrammatic way. So these were the steps that you saw earlier, and this is like a forward entailment signal where we are going one by one from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, step 4, so on, from the question to the answer without the legal context. We're not considering the legal context here, we are just looking at the steps standalone. What it signifies, what we are trying to do here is basically we are trying to see if any wrong basically a wrong legal question type came up, any misunderstood questions that could have come up, and how the flow would have been like. Basically, if I set a premises from step A and I move to step B, is there a relation? Because technically when the LLMs are doing reasoning, they follow this one by rule, because this is how they have been trained most of the time nowadays. So this is why the moving from the question to the answer is very important. Then we look at a reverse entailment, which is somewhat like a new thought process that we have, that we'll also look about the build up from the answer to the question. It talks about basically like whether the conclusion actually resolves the legal issue that we posed, and we are trying to see if there is a misalignment in the outputs. Because if, for example, we were able to go from the fact that Marla was domiciled in Montana before moving to Denver, which does not automatically make her domiciled, so this actually is the right step. And if we go back to the fourth one, it should be able to see basically the contradiction that it introduced when it was going in the forward direction. So the idea was that we are checking back the consistency by tracing back our workflow from question to answer back to from answer to the question. Now we have a third very important signal that we realized is very important, that we take the legal context as a whole and we try to see how well it is supported by each step that has been given to us. Instead of just looking at the step-by-step flow, we also introduce legal context as a separate entity, and we are trying to check if the relationship is between the legal context and each step. So this is what helps us in finding out what is an unsupported legal conclusion, what could be some causation errors, some misapplied legal rules. And this is important because it helps us in grounding these steps further. So we first see an interrelation between the steps, and then we ground it further from the legal context that was provided to give these answers. So based on these three signals, we did some test runs. I'll talk about the test run on this sample specifically. We were able to actually locate the issue with the step 4 and the step 5 relationship. And this was noted through these signals. So there was a drop in the entailment scores in both the cases, in the forward entailment, the reverse entailment, and then the legal context entailment. The very important thing is it just gave it a neutral. So Most of the time what we have observed is that the neutral step that we find out through our framework is basically where a model is making abduction and it's not able to actually deduce the steps properly and clearly in a broken out, basically in the well defined way. And these signals, a culmination of these signals, help us in picking out step 4 as like a wrong step as an indicator which can guide any person, anyone who is using a model in an unsupervised way, in an automated way, yet that there was something wrong here and they should be careful when making this conclusion, or if they are trying to use this answer of the LLM later on. And this is not just the thing. We are still like, this is a work in progress. We have just started it. We have some more methodologies that are there in the pipeline, but this is just one of them that we tested and it worked for us. What is like, so a very important thing, there's like a lot of limitation and future directions we can talk about, and there's a big role of legal experts also going forward, which is why we are having this conversation today. It's important that we try to understand what these deep, see, it doesn't truly understand the deep legal nuances. We have to be very careful. These are LLMs, they are made to generate outputs. They don't have moral conscience that they are scared of giving us a wrong answer, basically. So we have to be very careful. And there are multiple plausible paths that an LLM can take, and we don't know which path it will take. That's very important. So if it takes a certain path, it gives you an answer, it becomes our duty to give you a certain sense of like an external signal that can help you in understanding and believing, okay, should I believe this answer, or should I be very careful, should I refer to some other resources? So this extra indication that we give through our system of what we are planning to do further will be a will be very revolutionizing as well. So we what the role of legal experts also going forward comes into the picture, how basically like when we do this error analysis, we as AI engineers cannot obviously understand all the legal context that has been given or generated by an LLM. So it becomes very important for the legal experts to sit with the NLP people or with the engineers to actually help us in identifying, okay, this step was wrong because of these reasons, and these reasons could then be actually looked upon, and we could actually improve our evaluation system as Rob was talking about, and we could actually move towards like a trusted, legally responsible AI system. So there has to be this kind of like a hybrid approach where we actually include the legal experts into the domain. We leverage it because it's very expensive as well. We cannot annotate a lot of people. We cannot annotate a lot of data without spending a lot of time and effort. So it's very important we at least have some involvement so that we can actually exploit it further through these automated systems. So that's why the requirement of this kind of an automated system also becomes like hugely important.